好啦，我们这是抵达了尼加拉瀑布的第2天。好，然后呢，我们本来是要去朋友推荐的 Niagara-on-the-Lake 那边那个小镇吃个早餐，然后在那边逛一逛，再回来去坐尼加拉的瀑布的船。但是在去的路上，我们就看到了这个 White Water Walk， 然后它也是一个景点。然后就我之前来的时候，有跟妈妈来过这里这样。然后经过，因为想说这个点之前也是会排队啊，然后我们来，因为现在它刚好在10分钟还要开门，所以就停车也很轻松就停到，然后稍微等个10分钟就可以入场。我就想说，那我就先来把这个看完再走。那我们现在看一下外面，四周就长这样。它对面甚至有一间庙，然后写中文的。好，这个 White Water on the Walk，White Water Walk。然后一般好像搭就是公车什么的，这边也会到站。好，然后这是对面的景象。然后我们现在就是在美国跟加拿大的交界，来看一下地图上写的，就是这样。没错，好，我们现在在这隔着这个，对，然后对面从河的中间画出一条分界，这样。然后这边开车就要小心，因为开着开着就突然出现牌子说前方往前什么什么桥就是什么 USA， 然后需要有证件才可以通过之类。然后我想说，我就跟玄在说，我们身为岛民，实在是很不习惯这种开着会出现别国家的路牌的这种情况。那你昨晚睡得如何？
我蛮好的。
我们就昨天吃东西弄一弄，4点嘛，3点多4点才睡，4点多才睡。我好像关 iPad 的时候3点50几分，对，大概4点睡，然后今天8点起床，8点半，8点起床。
被闹钟吵到睡不着。
被闹钟？我没有，我是被打呼。
时钟。
对，我们的床旁边的墙上放了一个时钟，然后那个时钟就一直叮当叮当，就这样很大声。
好久没听到这种时钟了。
对，对，所以我要听着那个睡这样。那我们现在就排队等他开门。好，那我们现在要你的票要给？不用吗？他进到一个电梯。
到晚上呢，别忘了上那个再加1天2天的那个公交。
How's everyone doing today?
Great.
Great. My name is Swar, and I'll be your tour guide for about 20 seconds. Is this everyone's first time?
Yep.
Everyone's first time?
Yeah.
Nice. Welcome to Whitewater Walk. Currently, we'll be going down 23 stories down to the base of the Niagara Gorge. Upon arrival, just take a right and follow the tunnel down to our quarter-mile boardwalk. There are Class 6 rapids, most dangerous waters in the world. So with that, stay on the boardwalk at all times. Take as much time as you need, take photos, have fun, and once you're all done, come back to the same elevator. Someone will be there to pick you up. Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you. 在这里很冷。
怎么这么冷？
冰淇淋。还有一些历史介绍。然后，你要去走那个吗？
谢谢，好好。
Bridge to Freedom。所以以前美国还有奴隶制度的时候，这边就会有人透过穿越这边的桥来躲到加拿大。1855年的时候，这座桥也被盖成就是火车可以跨越这条河。好，那我们就来看看。这边的河超级湍急，
真的超湍急啊！我们在台湾没看过那么湍急的河，
真的、很大呢，又很宽，就是这么宽还这么湍急的河。
但是台湾的河都
较有可能是我们没有看到，很怕手机掉下去，抓好。好啦，那我们拍完照，现在就从刚刚拍照的地方长这样子，好，然后我们就来走这一条，可以看到很湍急的河流。How fast is the water？ 水有多快？最高速大概每个小时40公里的河速。但是曾经到 Brink of the Fall， 在加那个瀑布边的时候，到瀑布边的时候，最高有到最高有到109公里1小时。
如果是泛舟，应该会马上翻起。
急流泛舟，其实花莲那边的那个急流泛舟，搞不好在湍急的时候也是，有可能只是我们没有在那个时候去看。但我觉得台湾可能因为地形狭窄嘛，跟那个地形的关系，好像我不确定有没有这么宽的。
我在台湾，我觉得我没看过这么宽，
好低，还有多深？
而且我觉得台湾的水可能都少，
应该是你没有看到多的时候吧？我觉得台湾一定还是有更多的时候，就是看雨季啊什么之类，就是看哪里。好吧，有可能我们见识太少，
好吧。
我其实忘记开手证，绑手证。
那你要不要先开？
千万不要摔死！好，那我们就继续走。现在来看看为什么水是绿绿的。就是矿物质，它的水太湍急了，会翻起很多的矿物质，有一些溶掉的盐和这个 rock flour， 岩石、石头磨到很碎，很像面粉一样。因为让我们看有翻起来的浪，好高好高。多水，这边拍不到那个掀起来好高的那个，在树之间，这边冲下来之后那一段，
超高，
水好高哦，好多水。我觉得他们是不知道他们是现在算就是水比较多的季节，还是因为它一定也是随季节有差，一定有比较偏旱季的时候的水位会比较低一点。来了，好高的，这个真的好壮观哦！很多泡沫。这里飞起来超高。我们现在在看，它有写，我们现在对面看着的就是美国了。纽约州之前有从纽约那边来看尼加拉瀑布，但是大家都说加拿大这边的比较好看。然后我那个时候看也觉得，我自己比较起来也觉得加拿大的比较好看。但主要应该是这样，在这边的比较好玩，因为它有弄成一个小区域，有点像是观光区 区，这有什么赌城啊，然后什么有一大堆有的没的观光的点，然后对面的话则是规划成一个保护公园，所以它其实什么都没有。对。观光客，你要拍照，1、2、3，来你的夜嘞。好观光客哦，笑死了。好，这边看到一些鸟，非常鸟。这个人喜欢拍一些观光客照。1、2、3，再来，你拿你的叶嘞。亚洲观光客经典的那个姿态，好好笑。自己要做这种姿势，自己又很迟啊，很怕被别人看到。
啊，
应该是离水最近的，这边会冲上来。1、2、3。那我现在是我没有用一般那个 portrait 哦。好吧，那我帮他换一下。那我们现在来到朋友推荐来的小镇，就是 Niagara-on-the-Lake。然后我们现在来到它的应该是感觉是 Main Street 上面，我们要去吃一间 diner， 一间早午餐。就来录一下这间小镇的氛围。它很像我以前住在康州时候的小镇，因为我比较喜欢小镇胜过于大城市。但小镇住久真的会比较容易。看到了吧，在转角，对面有 ice cream， 就是这里到了，转角这里。好，这家店 Family Restaurant Stagecoach， 它是 restaurant， 然后也是 ice cream parlor， 然后还有很多室外桌。那我现在进到了这一家餐厅 ，Thank you。然后这是 menu。它就是里面长得就是这样，就是很传统 diner 的感觉。还有 specials， 然后烤类的 off the griddle eggs， 小朋友的，然后单点的早餐类，还有早餐三明治，汤类，三明治。还有一些午餐类，还有早餐类跟午餐类这样子。好，那我们就来点餐啦。它这边有专门卖冰淇淋的区这样。这样子。好。来了。Okay, Canadian bacon. Thank you.
Favorite and chocolate chip pancakes?
Yes.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. 枫糖浆。啊，这是我们的早午餐。好，反正是加拿大培根，然后一般的培根，然后它都有附薯条、home fries 跟吐司。 好，然后我们有另外单点了巧克力的那个 chocolate chips pancake， 想要让他吃吃看，让璇吃吃看美国的 pancake。好，那我们就开动啦。好啦，那我们吃完饭，现在来到了 Fort George， 是一个历史古迹，有点像安平古堡那样的地方。然后我们就来看一下，它等一下会有一个小表演。看一下，它长这样子，然后就有不同的点可以去看，然后都是有一些历史意义这样。
表演有说会在哪里吗？
先进去吧，它里面有那个 visitor center 可以问，还有店。
对，没想到可以抓住。
而且它这边要买，为什么大家都不进来买票就走进去了？13.25块。那大家不买票怎么进去呢？是一个户外的，我们刚刚开到这里，
是吗？
对啊，刚刚我们不是先开到这里，然后发现感觉这很像是私人住家的地方，所以我们才走。我们没有停在这，还是我们应该其实刚刚要停在这，就不用停他们那个，因为确实是在旁边。在这里要进去，应该就是要看门票的地方。
然后去买门票了。
先去偷看一下。要看表演的话，势必是要买门票才能进去。是一个堡，然后我们在这里，嗨，叔叔。它里面就长这样，所以这边应该是会要在这里要收费。它里面长这样，然后那边有一些像卫兵的人，他们都有一些有打扮成当时的样子的人在这里这样。对，然后就会进去走一走，就可以看表演。
Is the flintlock smoothbore muzzle-loading tower musket, also called the shortland pattern musket. Had a few different names. Usually they were long and a lot of words, and so typically British regulars called them Bess or Bessie or Brown Bess. That's what their nickname was. Now I didn't just rattle off that big long name to make myself seem smart or like I know what I'm talking about. It's a series of descriptors that are going to tell you how this weapon exactly works. And so first and foremost, this is a flintlock weapon. And so what that means is that the ignition of the firearm is done by a piece of flint and a piece of steel that creates the sparks that is going to ignite the black powder, which propels the bullet out of this thing. So that's the first thing. It is a flintlock weapon. It is a smoothbore weapon because the inside of the barrel is as smooth as maybe a piece of pipe you'd find under your sink. There's nothing in it. It's like a big long piece of pipe. It is a muzzle loader because when I load it, which you'll see later, I'm going to be loading it from the front, from the mouth, or the muzzle. And the tower musket, why it's called a tower musket, is because it was assembled at the Tower of London, which was the grand armory of the British Army at this time period. And so this is the standard infantry arm of a British regular. So 200 years ago, this would have been the height of technology, if you can believe it. This was the machine gun of 1812. So to go over exactly how it works, and when I pull the trigger, the flint here is going to fly forward, it's going to strike the steel, which is going to cause a spark to fall into the pan, hopefully ignite the powder, which is going to hopefully cause an explosion in the main chamber through the hole, which is hopefully going to fire the ball all the way down the weapon and hopefully hit something with it. Now you might have noticed that I said hopefully there a few times. That is not on accident. These muskets, these firearms, have a very storied reputation of not exactly being the most reliable weapon in human history. A musket like this was said to only be reliable about 5 shots out of 6. So 1 out of the 6 times it would go click and nothing would happen. And that could be for a number of reasons. On a day like today, maybe the wind gust picked up and blew the sparks out, or it blew the priming powder out of my pan. If it was too humid or too wet out, the black powder would get soggy essentially. It would no longer catch the spark and explode like it's supposed to. And so they were a very fickle weapon. And sometimes the musket's just in a mood. That is also something you have to consider, is what mood is my musket in today? And so yeah, it was not known as an overly reliable weapon. James over here is holding a different weapon than mine. Although they look very similar, they are two very different things. He is holding a rifle, I am holding a musket. They are not an interchangeable term, they are completely different things. And the difference between, which we'll get into a little bit more later, is the interior, the inside of the barrel. He has something called rifling, which is like a spiral down the barrel that's going to hold the ball closer and make it go much, much further than mine. Which brings up the range of my musket. This musket that I'm holding, the smoothbore one, only has an effective range of about 75 yards, which is not very far. It's not nothing to laugh at, but it's not exactly a sniper rifle. James over here, though, there are reports of riflemen being able to hit targets at 4, 5, sometimes 600 yards away. And so it's much, much more accurate. Now you're going to ask yourself the most obvious question: why on earth were they giving the soldiers a musket like this when they had rifles 200 years ago? And it comes down to a rate of fire, essentially. Like today with machine guns, the idea on the battlefield 200 years ago was to pour as much lead towards the enemy as humanly possible. And so that meant arming most of your men with one of these muskets that could slug, get ready for it, everybody, brace yourselves, 4 shots in 1 minute. Thank you. Thank you. So in the hands of a trained regular, that was what they were aiming for, which does not sound impressive to us today. But 200 years ago, this was the machine gun of 1812. This could pour the most lead down the battlefield faster than any other weapon on the planet. Whereas James is going to be a little bit slower. Now, of course, he's trading off speed for accuracy, and so we would fight in different ways. So you might have seen old movies where soldiers are marching into battle, shoulder to shoulder, they fire, and then they stand there and wait to get shot. And you might have asked yourself, who on earth would fight like this? Were they dumb back then? No, they were not dumb, I assure you. They were rather smart, maybe smarter in some ways. The idea was to pack all your men together and make them pull the trigger at the same time. And the idea of that is that if I have a company of 600 men and 100 of them don't go off, the other 500 still will. And even if most of those guys don't hit anything, somebody will hit something. That was the idea. It was to cut down on the problems with inaccuracy and to make up for its basically unreliability in terms of going off every time. So that was something called linear tactics, and this is how humanity would fight for a very, very, very long time. And so this weapon pretty much defined a good chunk of human history. And so yeah, it's just one of the most important weapons probably in history, I'd say. Now we're going to show you basically how these things will be loaded and fired now. And so the British regular, like myself, I'm dressed as a full-time British soldier who would have been stationed here at Fort George. And I'm going to learn to load and fire my musket using something called the platoon loading exercise, which is a big long book that tells me how to do all of this stuff. And so the idea is to standardize how every British soldier is taught. So the soldiers in India, the soldiers in the Caribbean, and the soldiers here in Canada would all learn to fire and load this thing exactly the same way. All the British soldiers are standardized, and they're supposed to be like robots. Do what I say, pull the trigger, catch the bullet. That was the idea of a British regular. And so I'm going to show you the platoon loading exercise. It's a very methodical way of going through the loading of a firearm like this. James is going to fire in a little bit of a different way, and we'll talk about why in a minute. So I'm going to start now. And when I received that order, I would kick the musket out in front of me, and I would tuck it under my shoulder like this. I would then open up the pan. So the pan is where the priming powder is going to go. And so that's essentially the idea. I would drop my hand back. The next order will be handle cartridge. And I'm going to reach back into this black cartridge box here, which holds my ammunition. And I'm going to withdraw one piece of ammunition, one shot. And so this is what it would have looked like in 1812. It's a paper cartridge with 110 to 120 grains of black powder, and historically a 69 caliber ball on the bottom. Now we have no ammunition in this today. There's no ball because I don't want to put holes through the fence or cause a diplomatic crisis. And so we're just firing blanks here. And so the first order will be to actually prime the cartridge, to prime the musket. And so what you're going to do at that point is you're going to use your teeth and you're going to bite the top of the cartridge off. Always spin it towards the enemy. That's a hack, yeah. Put a little bit musket about. And you bring it down. And at this point, since it's a muzzle loader, guess where the cartridge is going to go? Down the muzzle. And so I'm going to put the powder down there. Historically, I would have packed the paper down as well, but I'm just firing a blank today. I will then withdraw the ramrod, which is the most aptly named tool in human history, in my opinion, because it is a rod for ramming. It's to ram the cartridge all the way down to the bottom of the barrel so that it's ready to fire. Once I seat the cartridge, I return it back. And the manual makes specific mention of tapping the ramrod. They wanted the soldiers to tap it to make sure it was actually there, because they didn't want them firing out of the barrel. Sure, it might make an intimidating projectile. You might shish kebab an American on the other side, but you're going to have to ask for it back to reload. So that's going to be a bit of a problem. After that, you bring it back up to the shoulder. At this point, I'm going to fire off. So if you're a young person or you got sensitive ears, you might want to cover them. Just a little word of warning here. The next order is going to be to make ready. I'm going to kick the musket in front of me. I'm going to pull the hammer back into the ready position. And the next order is going to be present and fire. So that is the musket there, and so that's the standard infantry arm of a British regular. Now James is going to load his hunting rifle now, and so he's going to do it at his leisure. He's going to take his time to load it, make sure his round is packed down there nice and tight, to make sure that he gets the straightest and most accurate shot. Now you might notice that James and I are wearing slightly different outfits, emphasis on the slightly. I am dressed as a British regular, so a full-time soldier. He is a member of the Canadian militia, the Upper Canadian Militia. So the militia were citizen soldiers, so by law in Canada at the time, every male citizen ages 16 to 60 had to serve in the Canadian militia. And so they were raised, especially during wartime, to defend Upper Canada from the invading American forces. They fought alongside the regular British troops. James is also going to take time to aim as well, because his is a very accurate weapon, whereas my job is just to pull the trigger. And his is super loud, so if you want to cover your ears, I would recommend it.
That's loud.
Yeah. Here we go again. James, everybody. Thank you. So what you just saw was two flintlock weapons firing off for a demonstration. We each fired 2 rounds, and so 4 rounds altogether. And you might have noticed each time we pulled the trigger, a huge puff of smoke came out the end of the musket. And so basically one of the most common questions I get here at Fort George is, why are you dressed like you're in the Nutcracker? Did they not know about camouflage back then? They did, I assure you. Camouflage was something that all men wore hunting during this time period. But on the battlefield, it's a different story. So you have to imagine, that was 2 guys firing off 4 shots at Fort George. Now imagine a real battlefield 200 years ago, thousands of men on the battlefield, cannons, rockets going off. There's a lot of smoke that's going to settle on the battlefield. And this is something called the fog of war. And so essentially it would make it very hard to distinguish friend from foe on the battlefield. And so to make up for this and to cut down on instances of friendly fire, both sides would wear bright colors. So the British adopted red, the Americans chose blue, the Austrians white, and the Russians green, to give you a few examples there of some of the colors people were wearing. But every army was wearing a bright ornate uniform with a big shoot me here cross belt on the front of you and a tall black stupid hat with a big gold thing on it that could signal ships. And so essentially you were trying to stand out on the battlefield. And to give this, put this in perspective, there was many instances of friendly fire during the War of 1812, but the most commonly cited one happened at the Battle of Lundy's Lane in modern-day Niagara Falls. The British were there fighting, and one of the British units was called the Glengarry Light Infantry. They wore green jackets and black belts, much like the ones James is wearing. And they were fighting on the British side. But here's a question for you. If the British regulars dressed in red are firing at the Americans dressed in blue, and the Americans in blue are firing at the guys at red, who fires at the guys in green?
Everyone.
Everybody, yeah. And so during the confusion of the Battle of Lundy's Lane, when the Glengarry Light Infantry turned to retreat back towards the British lines, the British thought they were American soldiers, and they actually fired a few volleys into them by accident. And so you actually wanted to stand out on the battlefield during this period, which is hard to imagine nowadays. So that was the idea. Now I have a bayonet because I'm an infantryman. This is what we're all given. James here is a militia soldier, so a citizen, and so he has to equip himself to a certain degree. And so he is armed with a trade tomahawk and also a hunting knife. Now these are both tools that would have been used here on the Canadian frontier if you had a farm or if you were out hunting, but they're also pretty handy in close quarters combat as well, particularly the tomahawk. And so these are two of the weapons that some militiamen would certainly carry.
Fire! Firing a gun, firing a gun, firing a gun. Be prepared to fire, fire. I'm making sure that anybody on the outside also knows. But anyways, this is the real. We're wearing your protection, so I do recommend. And the vet. We're in haste. That sponge. Hey. Advance guard. Hey. Ram down. Hold. Prime. Firing the gun! Firing the gun! Firing the gun! Prepare to fire! Fire!
那我们就来看看加拿大的安平古堡，在进城，也很 多的炮台。对着什么？
对着美国。
对着美国。对面河的另外一边是美国。你去那个炮台那边，我帮你跟那个炮台拍那张。然后这是每一栋建筑物其实都有一些历史意义，但是我们没有什么时间可以慢慢看。来帮他拍照啦。其中一个建筑物。Okay, interesting. Thank you. 50 to 60 people. Yes. 还有50到60个人，军人会一起住在一起睡在这里。他说也会有一些富人跟小孩，但不知道为什么会有富人跟小孩。
Essentially, it acts as your last stand of defense. So if someone's going to break through the palisade wall, then you pretty well hole up in the barracks. So it's very, very defensible. So it's probably why there's no windows and everything. Yeah. How was the cannon? Good. Loud. Well, this is your barracks. So you have your privates and your enlisted men speaking, and your officers.
这是一些历史文物，各种枪。hot shot。好。当时1812年，这里曾经是战场，但是刚刚那个牌子只写美国、加拿大、英国都在为不同的原因而战，但是他没有写到底是什么。应该是其他的牌子有写，但我没有时间看到，要回去研究一下。